She told me our baby died, and I believed her for 43 years. Last spring, a woman with my eyes knocked on my door and called me Dad. That's not even the wildest part. Hey folks, it's Peter from After Her Lies. Before I dive in, let me ask you something straight. 96% of you who watch these videos aren't subscribed. I see the numbers. It stings, I won't lie. I'm a retired guy talking into a camera at my kitchen table about the mess I made of love, and some days it feels like I'm talking into a bucket. Hit the subscribe, smack the like, and tell me what you think at the end. Comment. It's the only way this old heart knows someone is listening. I was 22 the night I met Lynn Baker, Toledo, Ohio, 1980. If you know Toledo in those days, you know the smell of glass plants and mud after rain, and you know what a Friday night at a diner can feel like when your paycheck is in your pocket and your bones aren't tired yet. I worked the night shift at the Libby plant. My hands were always warm from furnaces, my clothes always smelling faintly like the inside of a bottle. There was a diner on Star Avenue, red stools, pie domes, coffee that could strip paint. I came in sometime past midnight with my buddy Rusty, and there she was behind the counter with a pencil stuck behind her ear. Brown hair, cut like she was trying to save $5 on a stylist, and a smile that made me set my hat down like I'd been caught stealing it. "What can I get you, honey?" That's what she said to Rusty. When she turned to me, she didn't say honey. She just squinted, and I swear I thought she was reading me like a receipt. "You look like you need something stronger than coffee," she said. I told her I didn't drink. That was technically true most nights. She slid me a piece of chocolate pie on the house as if to check whether I was lying. I wasn't. She laughed like it was news. That laugh followed me around like a stray dog for months. Her name tag said Lynn. I said my name was Peter. She said she knew I was a Peter because only Peters set their hat down with both hands like it was a promise. I still don't know what that means, but it did something to me. We talked until the cook flipped the sign to closed. Rusty went out to smoke, and when I walked her to her car, she stood with her keys in her hand and told me she was going to be a nurse's aide. That was her plan. Save tips, take classes at the community college, get out of her daddy's house. She glanced over her shoulder and said, "My dad has an opinion about everything, mostly me." I asked for her number. She wrote it on a napkin and said, "Don't call after 9, because that's when her dad closed his eyes in front of the TV and pretended to sleep. And that was the only time she had to herself. We went to movies where the sound was too loud and to the lake where the wind was louder. We ate fries in his Ford F-100 with the windows down and the radio up. She taught me that every song meant something to her, and mine didn't have to, and I taught her that a fire burns hotter if you stop stirring it and let it be. We drove out to the Maumee River at dusk and threw rocks just to count the skips. She made 4, I made 7. She stuck her tongue out and said that 7 didn't count because I knew how to cheat. There were things Lynn wouldn't talk about on those early nights. Her dad, for one. The first time I picked her up out in East Toledo, a man opened the door and looked past me like the world behind me had a problem. Ray Baker. He had deputy's shoulders and a deputy's haircut and a belt that looked like it knew how to hurt. His way of asking what I wanted was to say my last name twice like he was trying it on. Kincaid. Kincaid. I told him I was taking his daughter to a movie. He said he liked war films. I said we were seeing ordinary people. He barked into the house like a dog. "Hey Lynn, you taking a boy to see a crying picture?" He laughed without opening his mouth. We didn't linger there much after that. We parked down the block and she'd hop into the truck like a thief. She talked about places she wanted to go. Cincinnati, Nashville. Anywhere with neon where no one knew her last name. She slept at my apartment twice and we agreed to lie about it twice. I had a card table and 2 chairs and a mattress on the floor. I was a baby pretending to be a man, and she held my face with both hands like she was pretending too. The first lie was small. She told me she wasn't seeing anyone else. I didn't ask the question straight, but I meant it. I'd seen a man named Rick Dawson in the diner once, watching her work, elbows on the counter, eyes like nails in a board. She ignored him. When she brought me coffee, she put her hand on my shoulder a little too long. I walked outside to get air, and Rick followed. He told me he and Lynn were a thing. He told me to stop using his name like he was my friend. He walked away, and I told myself that didn't count as anything. She told me she missed a period on a Wednesday in June and cried like the sun had gone out. I put my hands out like a man who'd grabbed something hot. Then we sat at my card table, and I said I wanted this. I didn't even know what this was. I wanted the idea of it. I wanted to be the man you call when your body does a brave thing, even if you're not ready. She asked if I meant it, and I said I did. She got quiet, and then she laughed wrong, with no breath in it. She said we needed to tell her father, and then we both shut up for a long time. We didn't tell him. We told no one. She had a bag she kept by her bed with every calc book and nursing flyer she'd ever picked up, and she started putting tiny things in it too. A white onesie, a pacifier. She held it up like it was a fishhook that had snagged her lip. When she fell asleep at my place, she'd rest my hand on her belly like she wanted me to keep it there forever. There was a line down her stomach that I'd never seen before on any body, a thin line like a road drawn with a pencil. She said her Aunt Jean down in Cincinnati could help her with appointments without her father finding out, because Aunt Jean had a spare room and a big mouth in the right direction. We were counting weeks and saving tips and arguing about names when the second lie happened, and this one was bigger than both of us. I took Lynn to a little bar on Oak Street to hear Rusty's cousin's band, a Wednesday so it wouldn't be crowded, but it was. Rick walked in with two men with the kinds of haircuts that follow rules. He didn't look at us at first, then he did. The band was playing a cover sloppy and loud, and Lynn squeezed my hand until the bones popped. Rick came over, smiled, then touched her wrist like it belonged in his pocket. I stood up. He told me to sit back down. I told him she was with me. He didn't say anything, just looked past me at her stomach, like even then he knew more than I wanted him to know. I'm not proud of what I did. The punch was quick and stupid, and from the shoulder like I'd learned it watching my uncles, not thinking about what comes after. He fell into a chair, and I fell into him. It wasn't a fight, really. It was me trying to erase someone. One of his friends hit me behind the ear so hard I saw black dots. I remember Lynn screaming my name and someone pulling me by the shirt and a glass breaking under my elbow. I remember a sound that wasn't the band and wasn't the crowd, a crack like a bat on a ball. We didn't stay to count anything. We ran out a side door into the alley. There was snow piled black on the edges from where plows had shoved it and trucks had painted it with exhaust. My ears were ringing. Lynn put her fingers in my hair to see if they came back red. They did. She said we had to go. I said I needed to apologize or something decent. She said, "Peter, you have to listen to me right now. Please." She said my name like a rope. I drove her back to my apartment, shaking. We didn't talk. She made me sit on the edge of the tub while she dabbed my head with a washcloth. Then she told me what I did not want to hear. She said her father had Rick on a leash. She said Ray had friends who did favors for the county and friends who liked to do favors for him. She said she'd heard them in the kitchen once, talking about a back room at a bar and a busted jaw and a charge that would make a man's life small. She said, "Peter, baby, please, go to my aunt's place in Cincinnati. Just go for a few days. I will handle this. I will tell them it was nothing, and everyone can cool off." She packed a bag for me like a sister would, moving around my place like she'd lived there her whole life. The phone started ringing the next morning before the sun. Loud and ugly, the way the phone in my childhood house used to sound when my dad's brother got picked up on a weekend bender. I let it ring. It rang again. When it rang the third time, she picked it up and said hello. She listened and didn't speak. She hung up and told me there'd been an incident, which is a word you only use when you want to lie a little. She said nobody died. She said to go. I left town with the sense that I'd set something on fire and didn't stay to see if it burned to the ground. I drove south with a bag of clothes and the cassette tape she'd made me a month earlier. I stayed with Aunt Jean in a duplex with plastic on the couch, a kitchen where every cabinet door squeaked, and a phone that didn't ring. 2 days passed. On the third day, Lynn called and her voice was strange. She said everything was fine. She said Rick had a broken tooth and didn't want to press anything. She said her father was embarrassed that his deputy's name had been mentioned. Embarrassed men make rules, she said. She told me to stay a little longer while everything cooled. She told me she was going to a doctor appointment the next day, and then she'd come down too. Then she said 3 words that should have told me a different truth, but I wasn't smart enough to hear it. Trust me, Peter. I trusted her like a dog trusts the hand that feeds it. I cut a few extra days for the plant and told Rusty to cover my shifts. I put money in an envelope like a husband might, like I'd seen in movies. Aunt Jean's neighbor had a baby with colic, and the sound of crying came through the wall at all hours. When I got home on the 5th night, there was a letter under the door with my name on it, in a handwriting I knew by heart. My name in blue ink like a bruise. She wrote that she was sorry. She wrote that the baby was gone. She used the word lost 3 times. She wrote that it was better to have it over because now there was nothing for her father to aim at and nothing for me to fight for, and the danger would pass us by like a storm that breaks up before it hits. She wrote that she loved me in a way that made her scared of her own mouth. She ended with, "Please don't come. Please don't make this harder." She didn't sign it with love. She signed it with her name like a witness would. I drove back to Toledo anyway and told myself I'd stay in the truck if the lights were on. The lights were off. The house had the curtain closed like an eyelid. I sat there until my butt went numb, and then until my hope did too. I saw the deputy's car roll slow down the block and not stop. I didn't go to the door. I went back to my apartment and put the letter in the top drawer under my socks, which is where men put things they don't want to explain. The week after we broke, my mother called to ask if I was eating and then cried before I could answer. She had a way of crying with her mouth closed, like it wasn't anyone's business. I told her I was fine. She said, "Oh, Peter," and the meaning was, no. This is the part where some people expect a speech about destiny and the resilience of young hearts. That wasn't me. I did what many stupid young men do. I lumped the thing. I pushed it down. I met someone else because she helped me lump. Susan Miller, a kindergarten teacher with a laugh that got there a second late and a way of putting her hand on your forearm that made your blood settle. We married in '83. We had 2 boys. I learned to lay carpet, then to sell carpet, then to own a van with a phone number painted on the side. I learned that laying carpet at 50 is a young man's job done by too many old men. And I learned that loving someone because they absorb your pain is not the same as loving them because their weather is your weather. In '99 we split. We didn't throw dishes. We separated, then divorced. Because the distance between us had grown like a crack in a windshield you pretend you don't see until you fail inspection. We were good to each other in the ways that matter to kids and property and dogs. We were not good to each other in the ways that matter in the dark. You think that's the end of the Lynn part of the story. It was and it wasn't. Life does that. It closes a door and then 30 years later it shows you a draft and you realize the door was never sealed. My mother passed in 2016, cancer that came quick. The day we cleaned out her ranch, my sister found a box in the closet with my name on it. The lid felt sticky, like it had been taped at one point, then untaped and opened and taped again by life. Inside were things only a mother would keep for a son who didn't deserve a shrine. My Cub Scout kerchief slide, the certificate from a bowling league I never finished, a Polaroid of me with my first truck and my hair trying to run away from my head, and at the bottom a letter in blue ink with my name on it like a bruise. Not the one from Lynn, a different one. I recognized the handwriting anyway. The paper had gone soft at the edges. The postmark said January 1982. Hi, Peter. I'm at the Greyhound station. I have 40 minutes until my bus to Cincinnati. I'm finally doing what I should have done before. I want you to come meet me, and I want to talk without anyone listening. I have tickets for us tucked in the back. If you get this and you come, I'll be on the 7:05 to Cincinnati, platform 3. If you don't come, I'll know you don't want this to be a chapter, and I'll close the book. There were 2 tickets inside, folded, one stamped, one unstamped. My mother had put a green paper clip on them like she was saving coupons. I sat down on the carpet and understood that a thing I had thought was fate had also been interference. My mother never told me about that letter. She always thought she was protecting me from making a mess. She believed that you pick something and stay picked. She took the letter out of my mailbox, probably, or off the floor where the mailman shoved it under the door, and she did what mothers do when they overlove. She protected me from a truth that wasn't hers to handle. I don't blame her. That's easy to say, but I mean it. I sat in her empty house and tried to blame her, and my body wouldn't let me. Grief takes up the room where anger would like to sit. 4 years later I retired. Knees like old fence hinges, hands stiff in the morning. The big gift you get when you retire is time with your thoughts, and sometimes that's not a gift at all. I started this channel in the first winter after I stopped working. I named it after her lies because I thought that would cut through the noise, and because I was still, I see now, a little boy with a wound he liked to show to see who would flinch. I told stories about the dumb things I did and the way love had felt like a barn catching fire. You watched. Some of you even commented, and it made me feel like I was making something useful. Like a chair, something someone could sit on and say, yes, this holds. Last spring, my younger son convinced me to spit into a tube and send it off to a company that tells you who sneezed in 1770 and created your jawline. I did it as a joke. My sister called me the day the results came back and told me to check my messages. I'd never used that part of the site. There was a note from someone named Abigail Holt. She said our DNA said we were very closely related, and would I be willing to answer a couple questions? She said she hoped she wasn't going to ruin anyone's Sunday. My left hand went numb in a way it sometimes does when I don't stretch it in the morning. I wrote back. She asked if I knew a woman named Lynn Baker out of Toledo in the early 80s. The way I answered probably told her more than I meant to. I didn't type right away. I took a walk and then I came back and typed like my fingers were standing on a moving train. Yes, I wrote, that's a name I know. She asked if I had ever been told about a pregnancy or a baby. I typed that I was told there had been a loss. I typed the word loss like it didn't mean anything. She waited a bit and then she sent a photo of the side of her face on purpose, like she didn't want to come in straight through my heart. It didn't matter. The side of her face had my jaw, the way my ear leans a little, the dent in the cheek that shows up when her mouth is the kind of smile that doesn't show teeth. She was in her early 40s and I could see her babyhood somehow in the angle. Memory does tricks. She wrote, I think you might be my father. I wrote, I think you might be my daughter. We met in Indianapolis at a park near the art museum because it felt neutral. She brought a husband named Mark, who looked like the world hadn't done him in yet, and 2 boys who were fast on the grass and messed with each other like brothers do when both their parents are distracted. She walked toward me, and I had the dumb thought that I was late, like I had missed a train, and she was a conductor forgiving me. She put her arms out, and I put mine around her, and we did that shaking hug people do when the dam breaks. We cried like children. Then we sat on a bench and talked like the adults we were. She told me her adoption was closed. She only saw a few notes. Mother 20 years old, blonde hair, father unknown. She said unknown like a dare, and then she laughed. She'd taken the DNA test 2 years back. She'd been staring at my name for 6 months before she wrote me. She told me she had been watching my channel, that she had clicked one day because the title, After Her Lies, made her angry and then curious. She said she listened to a story I told about a cassette tape with Joan Jett and Springsteen and a scribble that said Lake Song, and she went cold because her adoptive mother had a shoebox with a cassette in it labeled Lake Song and no one knew why. She said she put on headphones and played it. I had taped my voice between the songs like a fool. "Lynn, you owe me 7 skips," I'd said in a thin 22-year-old bravado. 7 doesn't count, I answered myself, and Lynn's laugh was on that tape, small and too close to the mic. Abby's husband had paused the cassette and said, "Honey, I think that's him." That's what she told me. That she knew my voice before she knew my face. That's a thing you can't make up. It sounds like a movie. It wasn't. It was 2 people in a kitchen with a cassette player and a shoebox. She asked me if I wanted to know about her life. I said yes, and then I said I wanted to know about her mother, and I heard the way my voice changed on that word, mother, like it was a rock I'd been carrying in my mouth for 40 years. Abby had already done some digging. She's smart like that. She had found that Lynn had moved to Nebraska in the mid-80s under her married name. She told me Lynn had worked as a hospital clerk and then as a receptionist at a dentist's office. She'd married and divorced a man named Paul Carter. She had no other children that anyone knew about. She was alive, living in Kearney. The word alive did something to me I don't have words for. I felt angry and grateful at once. Like when you see someone walk in a door you thought you'd welded shut. I called an old number that a cousin of a friend had for Ray Baker. It was disconnected. Ray was dead anyway, Abby said. She'd found an obituary for him from 2009. A lot collapses when a man like that dies. I found an address for Lynn and dialed a number and hung up twice. On the 3rd try, Abby said, "Dad, do you want me to come with you if you go?" That word Dad did a number on me. I said yes, and then I said no, and we settled on her coming, but waiting in the car in case everyone's blood pressure couldn't take it. We drove there 2 weeks later. I packed a shirt I don't hate and my good shoes. I shaved. I practiced what I would say, which is a mistake men make. You can't plan certain conversations. We pulled up to a 1-story small house with a porch swing that needed paint. A ceramic frog by the steps, the yard neatly cut in the way of people who are trying to hold on. Abby stopped the car at the curb and put her hand on my shoulder like I was the one who'd just passed a driving test. She said, "If she isn't kind, we go." I walked up and knocked. The door opened before I brought my hand down. She was smaller than I remembered, and her hair was lighter, not from a bottle, but from time. Her face was both exactly hers and not at all. She had a line in the middle of her lower lip that I used to kiss because I liked the way the skin dipped there. She had oxygen tubing over her ears to a little tank by the door. The whole world went quiet then, and I heard the sound of that oxygen filling and pushing like a metronome for time we don't own. "Hi," she said, and said my name, and then she reached up with both hands and covered her mouth like she'd caught the bad words before they spilled. Her eyes filled too fast, and then she laughed a small sound that meant she wasn't surprised, and was very surprised. I said hello like a boy in church. I said I had someone outside. She said bring her in, like she lived to be kind to strangers, and then she saw Abby and understood in one breath and leaned against the door jamb. We sat in a living room with family photos of people I didn't know, and one picture of a lake I did. Lake Erie at dusk. The oxygen hummed. The clock on the wall ticked in a way that used to annoy me, but now sounded like proof I was alive. Abby sat between us like a translator. I wanted to tell Lynn she looked wonderful. That's a lie you tell the dying. I wanted to tell her she looked like a woman I'd known who had been run through a storm and had made it to a porch. I said, "You look like you," and she laughed and then coughed and then waved it away. "I need to tell you some things," she said. "I need to tell you what I tried to do back when I was 20 and stupid and thought I could outplan my father. And I need you to hear me without that thing you do with your eyebrows where you get your lecture ready." I told her I was ready to listen. I was not. She said Rick's broken tooth was not the problem. The broken tooth had been an opening. Her father had been furious that his name was mentioned in the bar when the argument started. He'd told Rick to file a report at first, to show strength. Then he'd told him to drop it when he realized it could bounce back. He didn't like mess. He told Lynn that if she didn't drop me, he would make sure I was charged with aggravated assault and a thing called intimidation of a witness, which I hadn't done and couldn't have done because I didn't understand witness as a concept. He said he'd make sure my foreman at the plant heard about it too. He said he'd make sure my brother lost his job out at the dealership for being my brother. If you never lived under a small-town deputy's version of power, you might not get how much of that is hot air and how much is real. Lynn had lived under it for 20 years. She knew it was both, so she wrote me the letter you heard about at the beginning. The first letter, the one that told me to go to Aunt Jean's. When that didn't make everything go away, she wrote another letter, the one with the bus tickets, and she took it to the post office because she didn't trust the mailman who played cards with her father. She waited. She went to the station at 6:50, and at 7:45 she threw both tickets in the trash and took the long bus to Cincinnati by herself and didn't come back to Toledo except once to get her diploma and once to bury her mother. "The baby," I said, and I felt my mouth go dry on that word again. There are words that your tongue doesn't trust after a while. "I lied," she said, and then she put her hand to her chest like she was looking for her breath there. "I lied to you because I didn't see a way that ended with you not getting hurt more. I didn't lose the baby. I gave her to a couple that my aunt's church knew. I made them promise to move and to never tell my father anything. I thought if Ray found out, he'd make a stink. He'd try to make me marry someone, or he'd try to yank rights from me, or he'd try to pin some charge on you. It sounds dramatic now, but you didn't live in my kitchen. You didn't see how he could turn a room into a courtroom when he felt embarrassed. You didn't see how he liked to make sentences. I didn't say anything. The room was crowded with things that weren't there a minute before. My mother, the bus station, the broken tooth, the way love changes when you push it down. I wrote you that it was a loss because it was," she said. "I lost you and you lost her. I thought I was protecting you. I thought if you knew there was a child, you would do all the things you do when you feel as if something has been taken that belonged to you. You would make speeches, and you would make righteous trouble. You would talk to men bigger than you and call them small. You would bring that boy anger you had and pour it into a place where men like my dad are very good at using it against you." She looked at me. I was wrong about some of that. Maybe I was right about enough to sleep at night back then. I told her about my mother's box and the bus tickets. Lynn put her hand to her mouth again, and for a second I feared she would chew the oxygen line like it was a nail. "She always liked me and didn't," Lynn said finally. "She liked the idea of you being loved. She didn't like the idea of me being in charge of it." Abby listened like a woman who had rehearsed this moment and was finding that rehearsal and reality are cousins, not twins. She asked Lynn if she had tried to find me. Lynn said she had, twice, quietly. Once she called the carpet business number. A woman answered. Susan. She told Lynn that if she tried to blow up a marriage, God would see, and so would my mother, and so would the boys, and that she needed to go live the life she chose. Lynn said she hung up and cried and told herself that was the right thing anyway. I looked at the floor then. You can blame a lot of people for a long time and then discover your own house has drafts you didn't feel. We talked that day until the sun pushed through the blinds and made a pattern on my knee. I asked about Paul Carter. She said he was a man who didn't ask questions, and that worked until it didn't. She said he didn't hit her. She said he didn't cheer either. I know that kind of man. For a while I was one. We ate chicken salad off plates that looked like wedding gifts from another decade. When she got tired, she said it out loud. She wasn't the kind of woman to perform strength. She was the kind to say, "I need to sit now." Before we left, she went to a side table and came back with a shoebox. It had the sound a shoebox makes when it's full of paper and hope. Inside were things I recognized and things I didn't. The cassette labeled Lake Song, a picture of the diner with the clock at midnight, a napkin with a phone number in the handwriting of a girl who wanted out. A Polaroid I had never seen. Susan, my ex-wife, and Lynn together on a bench at the mall, December of 1983, by the little strip of numbers on the edge. They weren't smiling. They were looking at each other like they both understood something big and both hated that they did. Susan's hand was on her purse the way a woman does when she thinks she might need to stand up. Lynn's jaw was set. "She asked me to stay away," Lynn said. "She told me you were trying to be a good man, and I was the thing that would make you remember all the ways you weren't." She wasn't wrong. She was very young. So was I. On the drive back to the hotel, Abby was quiet in the way people are when they are translating two versions of history into one story their chest can carry. She said finally that she was angry and grateful and everything else, and that she'd been all those things before we ever got in the car. She said she understood why I named the channel the thing I named it, and she also understood that it wasn't fair. And I said that sometimes old men build their houses on unfair and then wonder why the roof leaks. This should be the part where I tell you that we got a second chance at love. That we went to the courthouse and signed old people papers and had soup for dinner every night and watched the news together and understood when to change the channel when one of us started cussing at the screen. That's not the story I have to tell. Lynn got sicker that summer. Lungs that didn't want to cooperate, body that was tired from having to be the smart one for so long. We visited twice more. We watched the sun go down behind houses that looked like the ones in the neighborhood I grew up in. We held hands like 13-year-olds on a bus, careful and sweaty. We didn't pretend we were owed a happy ending. We gave each other the thing we could give. We told the truth. On the last visit, she asked me if I wanted to hear her lie from her own mouth the way she had written it with a pen at a kitchen table in 1981. She wanted to say it because she needed to forgive the girl who had used that word to make a problem small. She told me again that the baby had died, and then she said the word she had never said then. She said, "I am sorry." I told her it had worked better than either of us had any right to expect. She hit my knee with her hand, not soft. "Don't be sentimental," she said. That's one of the things I loved about her. She didn't let me float away on the story I preferred. Abby brought her boys to meet their grandmother, and Lynn held each of them by the face like she was calibrating some instrument to measure light. She told them they were handsome, and she told them to brush their teeth, even if their parents forgot to tell them. She told them to watch for black ice in the winter and to never throw a punch when a conversation will do. She said that to me too with her eyes. We said goodbye on the porch next to the ceramic frog. She put her hand on my chest and said, "We were kids, Peter. We did the math we knew. We did it wrong, and we did it to save you, and it saved you, and it took a lot too." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said the truest thing in my body. I said, "I never stopped loving you." She nodded like she knew and had known. She died in November when the leaves were already under snow. Abby called me first and said she'd gone easy and with a pastor who smelled like Old Spice holding her hand. We drove out there and stood in a small church where the songs sounded like they had been sung forever. I sat in the second row and watched Abby speak about a woman who made hard choices and paid full price. Then I got up like an old man who wasn't sure his legs would hold him and told a room of people who didn't know me that I had loved a girl with a line down her belly and a laugh that could do 10 things at once. I told them she saved my life in a way that doesn't make a headline. After the service, an old man came up to me and introduced himself as Rick's cousin. He told me Rick had died in '87 in a car wreck, and that the story at the bar had gotten bigger in some men's mouths than it deserved to be. He told me Ray Baker had died with more enemies than friends, and that most of those enemies weren't brave enough to say so at the time. He told me I was lucky. I said I knew. That's the thing that sticks with me, how lucky I was that someone chose to aim the blow at herself so it didn't hit me. If you're wondering whether I kept the channel name, I did. Not because I think of Lynn as a liar. I keep it because it makes people click, and inside I tell them the truth. That the lie she told was a kind of bravery. That the lies I told myself were the ones that did the long, slow damage. That the truth is messy and it shows up late and none of us get a clean one. After her lies is shorthand for after all of it. After we mess up. After we try to fix things the worst way. After we run and then finally turn around and walk back in the door and say, I am here. I am sorry. I am still me. I see some of you in the comments telling me to forgive myself. Others telling me I was a coward. You're both right. Some of you are young and think this is a story about people too old to matter. Some of you are old and know that this is what life looks like when you turn it over and look at the seams. If there's something I want you to take, it's this. You are holding pieces right now that you think don't fit because someone lied or you lied or because you never opened a letter. Write the letter again. Send it. Leave it in a place where it can be found when it's supposed to be found. Don't hit the man at the bar. Walk away and write your girl a note and tell her you will meet her at the station and be there early. I'm 67 now. My hands shake when I hold a coffee cup. My dog snores under the table while I'm recording. I go to the park with my grandsons and watch them chase each other the way my boys did, the way I did once when everything felt like it would last. I carry a photo in my wallet of a girl with a pencil behind her ear and another of a woman with smarter eyes who lived longer than anyone expected given what she had to carry. I have a daughter who calls me Dad and sends me pictures of her kids with chocolate on their mouths. I have a box of letters in my closet that I open sometimes when the house gets too quiet. There are days I wish I could go back and hold that boy by the shoulders and tell him to stay in the truck, to not raise his fists, to buy a bus ticket and wait on platform 3, even if the letter might not have come because your mother's hands were too brave. You don't get that chance. You get this one. You watched all the way to the end. Thank you, I mean it. And if you're one of those 96% who keep watching and don't subscribe, help me out. Tap the button, hit like, leave a comment. Tell me if you've ever had to carry a truth that felt like a lie to someone you loved. Tell me if you forgave yourself. Tell me if you're going to write the letter. I'll read what you write. I always do.